I just wanted to do something that was a bit more based around my values and my principles.
I see a lot of women who work in corporate, they don't want to work in corporate anymore, they want to get out of the rat race.
And if we can figure out what are the 1, 2, 3, 4 most important motivational drivers, then we're going to be feeling much more motivated, much more satisfied and then motivated as a result of that.
Hi and welcome to Accelerating Your Wealth with your host, myself, Rebecca Robertson. I'm an independent financial advisor and wealth coach. I'm the director of Evolution Financial Planning, who is also our sponsor for today's show. Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just got to let you know, are you enjoying the shows? If you are and there's more you want to listen to, then check out our quiz. You'll find the link below. You can fill out these questions and it will basically tell you what area of your finances you should focus on. So it might be business, it might be you're getting divorced, it might be investing. There's about 9 categories. And what it will give you is a playlist to the relevant categories of all the shows we've done that apply to that area and that subject. So what it allows you to do is super fast learn about the subject that you need to know super quick without having to scroll through about over 130 episodes currently. So I hope you find that helpful, and do let us know your feedback leave us a review via your preferred platform. Thanks. Hi, welcome to today's show. Today I'm joined with Melanie Coeshott. Hi Melanie.
Hi.
Hi, welcome for joining the show. Now, Melanie, you're a career coach and mentor. What does that mean?
What does that mean? Well, that is a great question. And actually, it took me a little while at the beginning of my journey as a coach to find a title, a term that I was comfortable with. And I had trained as a coach, and a lot of people call themselves life coaches or executive coaches or leadership coaches. And none of those words really felt right for me. And then I came across career coach, and that helped me to describe what I do. So I work with people on their work. So their work can be their careers, it can be their relationships with their boss at work, it can be about setting goals, it can be about getting promoted or career change or any of those things. So a career coach works with people in a way that helps them navigate their way forward. So it can be setting some goals, achieving some goals, dealing with some challenges, any and all of above.
So it's not always about career change.
No.
It might actually be career development.
Yeah, career development, definitely. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So you're here today to talk about your story, and that's how you went from a big corporate, can we say the name?
Yep.
So Mastercard, big corporate job. You was in an accountancy role, quite a senior accountancy role. And you created your own career change. So you've obviously worked in corporate, you know what about that career development, what that looks like, and then you reinvented yourself. And a lot of people look to do this. I see a lot of women who work in corporate, they don't want to work in corporate anymore, they want to get out of the rat race. So we're here today to talk about getting out of the rat race, if that's what you're looking to do. And also some career development, there'll be in there as well. And you actually successfully then moved into running your own business, which is Blue Diamond.
Mm-hmm.
So when did you realise you wanted to make this change?
So it was around 6, 7 years ago. No, probably longer than that, 8 years ago. And I was actually quite happy in my role. But I've been in finance for 20 years at that point in time. And it was a case of, I'll work a few more years, I'll pay off the mortgage, and then I'll do something that I really want to do. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking at that point in time going into like a non-profit or something. I don't know why I thought that, but I just wanted to do something that was a bit more based around my values and my principles. Yeah. And it wasn't like I was working against that at the time, but I wasn't really driven by my values in the way that I wanted to be. But then I didn't really know what that meant, and the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to discover what that could look like. And I was about halfway through my working life. We're all going to be living for longer, and hence we're all going to be working for longer. And I thought, why don't I start sooner rather than later? Because I wanted to give myself the longest kind of runway that I could to become successful in my next endeavour. And I had some coaching. I benefited from some coaching through a course at work. And there was a wonderful coach called Jenny, and she really helped me see things in a different way. And as I was going through the coaching, I actually thought, oh, I'd love to do what she's doing. So I got trained as a coach. I did quite a lot of internal coaching at Mastercard, coaching colleagues, coaching people in my team, people in the wider department, people in wider Mastercard. And I really enjoyed doing this.
What was it about that you enjoyed?
Well, working with people, helping people, helping them see things in a different way, from a different perspective, and helping them see that they had choices. Because a lot of them felt that they didn't have choices, and this was very empowering for them, but also empowering for me seeing that as well.
Yeah, you're seeing a result, which I guess he was working in accountancy, so it wasn't. I mean, we both work in figures and finance, and it's not always dull with spreadsheets. There can be exciting, graphs, and there's data there that can be really interesting, and really, for most businesses that's important data. But I suppose it's very different when you're dealing with people. What made you, what made you, going back a step, if you like, what made you get into accountancy in the first place?
So I discovered accountancy when I was at university. So I wasn't actually studying accountancy, I was studying business and French. And I wanted...
May we?
Yeah, maybe. But I wanted a role that would always be needed. So look, none of us ever have crystal balls, but I think even back then it's like, what roles are needed? And like, people always need accountants and finance people. And it was based on my own mum's experience. She'd had a career break to bring up the kids. I was one of the kids, and she'd never quite got back into it, and she'd never quite had a financial independence. And that was something that was really important to me as a female, but as somebody that was learning and going through kind of education and training, I wanted something that was safe and secure, and that I could have a family if I wanted.
Right.
Obviously, as a student, I didn't know if I'd ever want a family. It felt a long way off at that point in time. But that helped me forge my choice at that point in time. But I really saw it as a foot in the door to business rather than a means to an end rather than an end in itself.
Got it. Okay. And then was you just doing accountancy and sitting there going, this is not for me? Or was it that you felt like there was this shift happening internally with yourself, that you would evolve? You talked about obviously your values.
Yeah.
Was that part of the shift happening?
So at the point that happened, I'd been working as an accountant for 20 years. And working as an accountant, I did a lot less of the numbers than you might think. So I was leading teams, I was, working with stakeholders, I was managing budgets, had quite a strategic role in the teams that I was managing. But the people elements, whether it was the stakeholder management or managing my team, developing my team, that was always much more interesting and appealing. So I'd spend more time doing that than some of the numbers and the routine stuff, because that just wasn't as interesting to me.
Sure.
And if I'm honest, and from a kind of personality test perspective, etc., it's surprising that I stayed in it for as long as I did. So from the outside, people are always like, oh, how did you make the change from being an accountant to being a coach? For me, it was a natural progression. It had probably been moving that way for a long time. And then when I stopped and thought about, well, what could I do next? The people, helping people, developing people from a personal and professional perspective, that had always been there. And so that seemed like an obvious next step for me.
So it was more about, maybe not, did values come into it then, or was it more to do with like your people, the skill set, the things you enjoyed to do?
So the values in terms of helping other people definitely came into it. And the skill set, I had the ability to build relationships with people, connect people, listen, help develop. But I did have to build up a whole new skill set as well that I didn't have at that point in time.
So at that point, you, when you were looking at, you obviously working in an accountancy kind of role, but there was a lot of people work involved. you were financially secure, you had an employed salary, you had pension contributions, they were paying into your pension as well. At the time, I think you had with your partner 3 or 4 properties that you were quite relatively financially secure, and I would say potentially even financially independent. So if you needed to go on your own, or if something happened to your partner, God forbid, or you wanted to make any relationship changes, you would be financially secure.
Yeah, so I was in a good, secure position at that point in time.
And that was something that was important to you.
Yeah.
And something that had been driven by, your mother's history and that background. So how do you marry those two, that pull to be, I want to be doing more with my life. I've got, another 20, 30, 40 years of working. I've got this security. I'm going to change. Because that's the biggest thing. I have people come to me who want financial coaching of some description. And the bottom line is that's a really big leap, like that leap from one thing to the next, like anything, whether you're separating from someone, moving out of the country, whatever big milestone we're doing, career change, it's a big leap of faith of this unknown element. So what gave you the strength, or not the motivation, what gave you the confidence to do it?
So couple of different things there. So firstly, I was in a safe financial situation, and that was indeed very important to me. But I also saved up for my departure. So I didn't just decide one day I'm going to leave. I actually planned for it. From start to finish, it took me about 2 years to actually, I guess, have the confidence to do it, but save up some money to do that as well. So it didn't happen overnight. And I knew that I had enough money to probably last about 2 years. So 1 year, definitely 2 years. And of course, nobody could foresee the pandemic at that point in time.
No.
I also had the security of my husband at the time. So yeah, he had a very secure job as well. This was a decision that we went into jointly. And I do have discussions with other female friends that are not in as secure a position as I was at that point in time. So I do recognise that was something. But I also know lots of other business owners, freelancers that have made similar decisions without that security as well. And I think I needed to feel invested. So it needed to be a bit difficult for me to help me make it work. So the third thing was, and this goes back to my values, one of them is achievement. And I knew deep down that I could make a success of this. So I didn't know quite what that looked like. And actually it hasn't turned out quite how I expected, for good reasons and different reasons. But I knew that I could make a success of this. And I think if you have that belief in yourself, you can make things happen.
What gave you that belief? How did you know?
I think going through life, I've always worked very hard, and I've always had the mantra that I can do anything I set my mind to. I've actually revised that over time. It's I can do anything I set my mind and heart to. If I don't have my heart in it, no way that I'm going to spend the effort. But I knew that I was willing to put in the effort. And I've always been a good all-rounder. So I've never been great at anything, which sounds terrible, right? But I'm good enough at lots of things. And I knew that I could make a success of this.
Brilliant. Well, you said that it's not quite worked out the way you thought. So what did you think it was going to look like, and what's different from that?
So initially when I set out, I thought I was going to work all the time with individuals. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to empower people who were going to fund their own coaching, take their own kind of journey into their hands. And I do work with some individual clients, but over time I've worked with more and more corporate clients. So either as my own, in my own Blue Diamond contracting, branding way, I've worked with lots of different organisations and indeed some individuals whose coaching is funded by their employers. But I've also worked as an associate for various other learning and development and coaching organisations, and this was a game changer for me. Initially, I felt like I had to break away from corporate. I had to do it all on my own. I had to be independent, and actually, that was a bit foolish, really, because that takes a lot of time to do that, and a lot of, balls some of the time, and, energy, doing the marketing, having those discussions, waiting. And actually going down the associate route, I've worked with some amazing clients that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to work with under my own Blue Diamond brand at this point of time.
Sure, got it. Okay, so it's more from like the clients you've been working with is much more wider than you realised. Yeah. Okay, that's always a good thing, and probably giving you different revenue streams as
Absolutely,
well.
yeah.
And also, I think we talk about niching quite a lot in business, and actually sometimes it's not always a good thing to niche. It's always good to have different streams of revenue. I know with my company, Evolution Financial Planning, I could niche just working with divorced women, for example, but I don't, because we have couples and we have mixed relationships and we have inheritance and we have pensions and there's lots of other things. I don't actually want to niche because it can get a little bit same, it can get a little bit boring, and why do that when you've got a choice in business? That's the thing, you're not working for somebody else that's telling you need to do it this way. You can choose. So financially, you've gone from being this secure position. How long did you need to use your savings for?
So I probably did use my savings in the first year because I had outgoings to, bills to pay like everybody. But there was a transition point probably in the middle of 2020, because it was a funny year for everybody.
Great timing.
Yeah, I was running lots of online courses. I was pivoting, doing lots of different things, trying lots of different things, experimenting like a lot of people were at that point in time. And so, I was gradually having more reliable income streams. But it was probably like even a year or so after that things became more stable. And then, 6.5 years on, it's great. I'm in a great position. Finances of business owners are a little bit complex because it's not a salary like for like. There's salary and dividends and things like that. But a few years on, I'm in a good, comfortable position, and can't believe really how well it's all gone.
But it's not like an overnight success, and
No.
it's like people will say, "Oh, how lucky is she?"
Yeah.
But there's no luck involved in any of that.
You
right?
make your own luck.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier on that you've always been hardworking. Do you think starting your own business and this career change that you've made has been the hardest thing you've done?
That's a really tough question because it is hard, and even now I continue to work hard, and yet it's enjoyable work because it's work that I choose to do. So even on my hardest days where maybe I've got loads of clients back to back, or some travel, or some design work that I don't particularly want to do or whatever, it's still fun, really. So it is. I do work hard. I'm very diligent, but I'm now working hard for me rather than working hard for, corporate shareholders and other stakeholders that, don't really care as long as the work's done. I know I'm making a difference for me and my family, and I know that I'm making a difference for my clients.
Yeah, I love that. And so what do you know now as a business owner that you wish you'd known in those first year or two?
Knowing that things will evolve and change, and that's okay. And so there will be opportunities. Grasp those opportunities with both hands and jump in if it feels right, but don't feel obliged to do everything. And also don't feel obliged to, if something doesn't feel right, it's okay to stop doing it as well, and things will evolve. And I kind of got, I knew that what I was planning wouldn't necessarily go to plan, but I think having the courage to say, that's okay, that's part of the journey, that's part of the learning process or whatever, because it has indeed, everything's been useful, even if I've decided to cut things off after spending money or time on them. It's all been a useful part of the process.
It's all learning and figuring out what works for you, because what works for you wouldn't necessarily work with somebody else. Is there any sort of practical tips or practical tools that you would suggest somebody has in their tool belt when it comes to making a career change?
So one of my very, very favourite tools is something called Motivational Maps. And this is something I use with all of my clients, all of my individual clients, anyone thinking about career development in any way. So it's not necessarily career change, but any kind of career development. And Motivational Maps looks at motivation. So it's not the question of, Rebecca, are you motivated? Yes or no? But everybody's got different motivational drivers. And we've all actually got the same 9 motivational drivers, but we've got them to a greater or lesser extent. And it's really important to know what are your drivers right here, right now. And these can evolve over time. But what are your most important drivers now? And are they being satisfied? Yes, no, a little bit, whatever. Because if you know that, it's a little bit like having a blood test. If you know that there's something a bit low or a bit high or whatever, then you can do something about it. If you don't know and you're just feeling that this is hard work, or oh, I don't like this anymore, or oh, it's draining my energy, then often people just stop or try and do something different, and they're just stabbing in the dark. Motivational maps can give you a clearer indication of what's working. We want to keep that. What's not working, we don't want to keep that. Let's tweak it. Let's see what we can do about it.
So can you give me an example? So I'm just thinking, we were talking earlier on that I can talk for England and listen and have conversations all day, every day. That's what I like with you, with your coaching sessions. That's all you do, appointments back to back. So that's a skill set that's really easy. So it doesn't drain you. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about motivation, is it looking at things that do drain you, or am I thinking it really wrongly?
So it's not necessarily looking at behaviours or skills or whatever, but it's what's important to you. So you just telling me that piece of information gives me a clue, without having done the tool, of the types of things that are, that motivate you. And you said about the podcast, and it's an investment and it's things, but it's something that you really want to do, and you want to do this. You want to invest in that, your time, etc. And it doesn't feel draining or whatever. So that gives me a clue. I've already got an idea of a few motivational drivers, and maybe we can do your motivational map afterwards to see, to confirm this. But sometimes parts of people's roles are using like skills, or I don't know, maybe the amount of time that we spend on a certain thing is now misaligned to our motivational drivers. And if we're spending all of our time, I don't know, using our expertise when actually we're more of a generalist, or trying to chivvy people along when actually we can take or leave people, then it is going to drain us. And if we can figure out what are the 1, 2, 3, 4 most important motivational drivers, get ourselves into a position where we can spend more time on those things, then we're going to be feeling much more motivated, much more satisfied, and then motivated as a result of that.
Okay, so I think I get this, but I've got almost 2 questions and I'm thinking about who's listening to this. The first one is, as a business owner, you at the beginning, you have to do everything. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't really matter what I get that choice now 15 years in. I can outsource certain parts. I can get a VA to do, diary stuff, and I've got a tech person doing editing, and because that's no way, not interested at all. But when you first start in your business, you have to do everything. So how does that motivational map apply to that kind of situation?
Mm-hmm. So I think, so I discovered motivational maps in the period when I'd given in my notice and before I started work. And for me, it was just like, well, that explains everything. So that was just really clear to me. And one of my highest ones was around freedom. So spirit is the name of the motivational driver, and that often bubbles up just before we leave, basically, because I've got to get out of this place. So that was really high, and actually that's continued to be high for me during that time. So any time that I feel constrained by anything, that's my spirit going, oh, get out, go for a walk, or outsource this stuff, or get out of this relationship, or whatever. So that spirit is really important. So it's really important we can take a motivational map assessment at any point, but it will highlight the things that are really important to us. When we're new in business and we have to do everything, so there are, have to, okay, the language is important. There are things that we need to do as business owners, but we don't need to do everything.
Okay,
And sometimes
yeah.
we throw ourselves in, like, I've got to do a podcast, I've got to do a newsletter, I've got to do all these things. You don't need to do anything. Figure out the things that are important to you. And I think sometimes we do overstretch ourselves, we exhaust ourselves because we spend time on things that are actually not helping us achieve our goals. And being clear on what our motivational drivers are is really important to make sure that we're okay. As business owners, we're right and centre. We need to make sure we're okay, because if not, the business isn't anything without us.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And that makes me think my second question, and it sort of brings it back to what you were saying, that you did your motivational map after you gave in your notice. And my second question was, if people that are listening that are employed and they're maybe not looking to start, a coaching business or change careers, but they know they're not very happy in their current job, could they use that kind of tool or that kind of thinking to change the type of job that they're doing where they are?
Absolutely. So on Tuesday, I had an email from somebody that I spoke to 2 years ago, and he's come back to me and he said, I'm ready to proceed with the motivational map. He said, things have not, worked out in the way that I was hoping. I'm like, great. So he's employed. He knows that he's not happy, but he can't quite see how. He's already completed the map, so I can see why he's not happy. But that's going to be useful for him in either speaking to his employer in terms of making some tweaks and changes, or figuring out a different path for him that is going to allow him to have satisfaction in the motivational drivers that are not currently being satisfied. And it's really useful because it can give us that clarity. It's there in black and white. People can't wriggle out of it or deny it or whatever. I can see. And so we can have a conversation about it. And then it can be empowering in terms of, okay, this has been going on for 2 years. If he came to me 2 years ago, he's made some tweaks and changes that weren't enough. What do you need to do now? What are your options? So it can help people explore the options. And, with the tool itself and the report, people can go away and figure out their own options, or they could work with me or somebody like me to figure out the options and what is the best option for them.
Yeah, what's next? Yeah.
But it doesn't always mean career change. It doesn't always mean leaving your employer. Sometimes having that knowledge gives you enough information or enough awareness to have a discussion with your manager or to make some changes of your own accord.
Sure. Or it might be that there's a promotion coming up, right? And you're thinking, well, is that right for me? Or do I, they're expanding to another role or department. Should I look at doing that? And setting yourself up for that. And obviously with that, from a financial perspective, then potentially becomes, more responsibility, but obviously then potentially more money. So just taking things back a bit step, we've obviously talked about you being financially secure when you had your employed job, and now 6 years on, the business is doing well. But in that space and time, with your partner, you've sort of sold a lot of the buy-to-let properties that you had. From a wealth creation perspective, what was your thought process around that? Because a lot of women do come to me thinking, I want to build a property portfolio. Less than what there was 5 years ago because of the tax reasons. But what's been your reason to change that?
So the first house that we sold was to pay for school fees.
Okay.
So that was a decision that we made to send our kids to an independent school. It has been the best decision. Saw something in the news this morning about people sat there doing exams, freezing away, and I'm thinking, well, thank goodness that doesn't happen in my kids' school.
Yeah.
And it has, definitely opened up different options for my kids.
Everyone has their personal choice. It depends. Really, it's a postcode lottery when it comes to schools.
Yeah. So that was a choice that we made.
Sure.
But luckily, we had a house that we could sell to do that, and so that was the first reason. The second, we're trying to sell a house at the moment, but we need to evict the lady that lives there. So unfortunately, we've been very kind. She's been in the property for 12 years, but we've not really put the rent up because she lost her husband, she can't afford it, and many years on now, we need to sell for personal reasons, and yeah, so that's proving a little bit tricky. That's a real emotional thing because we don't want to turf this poor lady out on the streets, but we need to
sell. We had a buy-to-let property. It was more those accidental landlords, they call it, where we had a flat, we moved house, bought a house, and we rented out the flat. We actually then bought another house. We moved out from the second home, and we still kept the flat but sold the house. But it was that was quite a few years went past, and then we ended up selling the flat. Because the lady that lived there, her partner left her. And then for her to get social housing or any support, she had to have an eviction letter. So then it has to go through the courts, which you have to have, I think it's 6 months of no payment of rent, and then you have to wait for the court date, and then you have to wait for the bailiff date. So it was months and months and months and months that we went. And so that's why in the end we're selling it. I don't want the hassle. But it's still a way to build wealth, right? Yeah. But it's not right for everybody.
No. And, we were accidental landlords, actually. That's how we, came into our properties, and they served us well. And, when we were younger and we had disposable income and we paid in, and then the tenants were paying in, it was all good. And so, we're pleased with the decision that we made at that point, but it's no longer right for us at this point in time. No.
If you're somebody that is not sure what to do with their finances, maybe you're working and you're not sure what to do with the bonuses you've got at work, or maybe you started a business and you've got profits and you're not sure what you should be doing to enable you to A, pay yourself more, or B, potentially retire earlier. Maybe you're somebody that's thinking about, do I overpay on the mortgage? You've received some inheritance. You've got lots of questions around your finances and what to do next. Then check out Evolution Financial Planning, who are regulated independent financial advisors and financial planners that can help you make some of those big decisions in life. So will that mean that you don't have any buy-to-lets after that's sold?
After this is sold, we won't have any more. Yeah.
But am I right in saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that some of the money that you took from the buy-to-let property, you invested it?
Yeah.
So would you be happy sharing a little bit about what that process looked like? Because I don't know if that was all yourself as well. That was some of your partners.
Yeah. So, all of that money we invested, and the hope was that, well, the money may increase during that period of time that the kids were at school. And
it's a long time they're at school, right?
Yeah. And we might even get some back. Sadly, that's not been the case. I mean, during the period that since we sold the house and the kids have been at school, there's been COVID, there's been the war in Ukraine. There've been there's been some ups and downs. There's been a lot of inflation, and now there's been the VAT on school fees. So sadly, no, we're actually paying in some more money now. So we've still got money left in the pot.
Yeah.
My son finishes school this year. My daughter's still got a few years left, but we can look ahead and see that we need to top it up. Yeah. And actually, we started a year ago by paying in £500 a month each, with a view to this, the cumulative compound interest kind of effect, that this will grow over time, rather than, we've run out of money, where are we going to find this from? So, this is always kind of looking ahead about things. Let's not wait until we get to the point where we've got no more money and sorry, Zoe, you need to leave school. Yeah.
And I think that's something that obviously you're a client of mine. We've worked together for 8 years.
Yeah.
I think so. It's a long time. And one of the things you're really good at is that planning ahead. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't have that foresight. So from your coaching perspective, why do you think that is?
I've always got an eye on the future. I'm very much in the moment as well, so don't get me wrong. It's not like my poor grandmother, she would just reuse tea bags and swill milk out of the milk bottle with some water. I'm not like that. I live for the day today as well. But I've got an eye on the future, because actually I'm very interested in ageing. We're all going to be living for a long time, or hopefully we're all going to be living for a long time.
Medically, people are living longer.
Yeah. And we do, I want to be comfortable in my old age, and I want to be able to pay for holidays or medical care, or, home, care in the home, or whatever it is that needs to be paid for. So I've definitely got that eye on the future. And again, talking from family experience, things don't always go to plan as we get old, and we've got some different situations in our family, but when money has been needed, and if they hadn't prepared, then they would be in a much worse position now. So
why do you think other people don't plan? Because I have a lot of people that have come to, I don't need a financial advisor because I'm just, I haven't got enough money, or I'll worry about that later, or I'm going to sell my business, or I've got property, I've got a large residential home, I'll sell that, or they just don't think about it, and they make excuses or reasons as to why they think they don't need to plan.
I think there's probably different reasons. I know a lot of people don't like to think or talk about death. We're all going to die at some point.
Unfortunately.
And
haven't
we
got that medical
cure
yet.
No, and we don't know when that's going to be. So, it could be tomorrow, it could be in 50 years' time. If I'm 50, if I live for another 50 years, I need some money to be able to help me live in that. Or my poor kids are going to be supporting me, or the government, God forbid. And I don't want to put my eggs in that basket.
But a lot of people do. Like, they think that the state pension is there to save them.
But I think maybe they've not experienced unfortunate situations in their own family. Let's put it that way. And in cases, the government does step in and sort things out, but we can't all sit back and rely on that, because, that if the government's struggling now and having to raise tax and things like that,
council tax is going up in Kent by 4% predicted. A lot of them are selling properties. In London particularly, that's going to start happening over this year, just to make revenue, just to meet what's the right word I'm looking for? Ends meet.
Yeah. And I think we, as members of society, we have responsibility to ourselves and our family. But I can't wait to see what might happen, and that needs to start now. Now, if I get to the point where I retire and I've got loads of money, then I can go on holidays or buy a holiday home or whatever. That'll be great. But at this point in time, I don't know enough about the future, and I want to make sure that I'm safe and my family's safe and everything else.
Yeah, so you've got options.
Yeah. And okay, money, and we say money makes people happy. Well, money doesn't bring happiness, but it does give you options.
Yeah.
And I'm very pleased for all the options that I've been able to take.
Do you think there's some delayed gratification in there somewhere?
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that, in the society that we live in today, that there is a lot around looking a certain way, having certain cars, having a certain persona, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I see people who have, if I had their kind of holidays, if I had their kind of car, the kind of cash flow and money that I would need to have in the bank to justify that would be, I imagine, and I'm making an assumption here, but I would imagine, it would be probably 10 times what they've got. So I think there's this real pressure for people to find out to drive a certain car, to look a certain way. And it comes back to that values, right? What's in financially, where your values, where you spend your money. So you chose to send your children to private school, and that was so much so that it was such a big value and so important that you sold a property to enable that, and you did financial investing to support that. You did it very carefully in that sense. Whereas somebody may say, well, actually not worried about that, but it's important that I do have a nice car, that it's safe or it's secure or it's reliable. Those elements come into it, and I will take out finance on it, and I'll pay £500 a month for that finance. And we're sort of told that that's okay to do that. That should, but then they won't invest in their pensions, or they won't invest for their future. They won't plan for that future. Is there, from a coaching perspective, have you got any views as to why you think people might think like that?
I think it's really hard to know. I think whether it's people's background, their upbringing, their, financial, what's the word for it? Mindset, I guess, is so different. And I think sometimes couples kind of spur each other on, or sometimes one couple thinks very differently from the other. I know from my own direct experience, so my own relationships and like my relationship with my brother, we spent some time together last week, which was great. We have a similar kind of mindset, and I think that is helpful. There are other people that I know and I'm good friends with, and I struggle to understand their mindset, because it is more about the car, the house, the clothes, giving their kids what they need or they want or whatever, and that's not how I have been brought up. And certainly, going back to some of the I guess the leap from being financially secure to going out and being self-employed again, I didn't really have any money to start with. My husband didn't have any money either, and what we've created, that's the important word, we've created ourselves, and I can create wealth again. And so actually this is really empowering for me as a business owner, that I have been able to do that. Now, people don't always believe that this is possible because they haven't been in a poorish position ever, or maybe they feel that there is no tomorrow, let's just spend it anyway, or we need to give our kids what people have different perspectives, different values.
But
no
I think
judgment. No judgment.
It's just a question.
But I think it just the mindset is important in terms of that. So
do you think that there's some questions that people could ask themselves around that, like from anyone that's listening that's thinking, oh, actually I need to maybe change my thinking around that, or I'd like to look at that differently? Is there any sort of questions that they could ask themselves?
I think one of the things that I think is the kind of different time zones, that's the wrong thing, but time, like there's the short term, the medium term, the long term, and we don't always know, like none of us has a crystal ball, but we probably know what our spending is now, what our spending habits, and if we don't, then maybe we should get a handle on that. What kind of things do we need in the next year or for the rest of this decade, based on how old we are or what we know is coming up with our kids or whatever? And then looking a little bit longer in the future in terms of, well, what might my needs be? Am I going to need to support my parents? That's a real consideration for many people. For some people, they're going to get a handout, they're going to inherit money from their parents, so that's a different situation. But trying to think ahead is important, because, we don't know. We don't know.
It was certainly at the moment. I think maybe 5 years ago I could sort of, I've never got a crystal ball, but I could make some predictions around some things. But since COVID and Donald Trump, it's just been everything's so unpredictable. With obviously the Ukraine war as well, what's going on in Russia with China and the US, and now Greenland, it's Venezuela. It's just, there's so much been going on.
Every day there's like
exactly, and I think there's something there about ignoring some of that noise. I think there's a lot of people who are not making decisions because of the unknown. And had you have not made any decisions, you wouldn't be where you are now. No. If you'd have procrastinated and gone, oh, well, I won't move from Mastercard and my secure job, you wouldn't be where you are now. No. So I think that's an interesting point. Going back to the investing side, for people that are maybe not invested before, you've obviously had some great learnings from that investment experience. Is there any sort of do's and don'ts that you would suggest that people do or don't do when it comes to investing?
I think one of the things that I would say is have a go, right? So maybe have a dabble, take some money that isn't a huge amount of money, and that if you do lose it, then it's not a big deal. And that's going to be different amounts for different people, but whether it's £100 or £1,000 or whatever, and have a play. Now, the types of investments I have, so I've got my pension, which you manage for me, which I'm very proud to work with you on. But I have my own investments as well, and mainly that's school fees related, because but there's, I've got my ISA and things like that as well. Definitely use an ISA wrapper if you can, if you've still got that available. I use II, so Interactive Investor, as a platform. Other platforms are available, but that's one
no
that
advice given.
I've been using for many years. I find it very user friendly. There's all kinds of advice on, not advice, but information about different funds,
factual
and
information, which can be overwhelming for a lot of people, that's why they don't start, because there's a lot out there.
But I think if you set yourself up an account, put some money in, learn how the platform works. So, it's a tool like any other tool that we use in our work or our businesses. And maybe put some money in one or two different funds. There are kind of tracker funds. There are funds for growth, funds for, and I get that it is overwhelming. And, there are funds that are kind of safer. So it's having a play, putting the money in there. Don't look at it too often. So maybe look at it on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. Don't have an app on your phone, and just see what happens to it, because it is quite interesting to see the ups and downs. And, if you've got a diversified fund, so different, geographical locations or different types of business in the fund, then it can be interesting. I'm more interested in, has it gone up or has it gone down, rather than, why might that be? But, people do get very, very interested in this as well. And I think just having the confidence to see that actually the returns can be much better than putting your money in a savings account, which pays whatever percentage. I got emails from the bank this week, the rates are going down again. Great. Okay. So, the investments are not affected in the same way by the interest rates. So, there's yes, they can go down, but they can go up by a good way as well.
So, I mean, obviously I am your IFA. So I asked this question with no expectation in your answer. That's not the purpose of why I'm asking it. But what's the difference from when you've done investing yourself, which is not for everybody, than working with an IFA?
So working with the IFA, so you've got my pension, so you manage my pensions, and it's been great because initially you took my kind of older pensions, and then my current employer, or my employer at the time, pension stayed separate until quite recently. During that time, we've gone in one direction. We then changed plan and gone in a different direction, and now we're doing something a little bit different again. So it's been great working with somebody that's obviously got a lot of financial acumen, that's close to not the markets, but what's going on, what things are trending and whatever. And it's great knowing that, okay, you haven't got a crystal ball. We don't always get things right. There are ups and downs and whatever. I don't think there's been downs, but there's maybe not been as much growth.
There was a reason to make changes. There was a reason to make
changes,
and that's mainly down to the industry changing. There's we went with, I won't mention the name, but we went with what's called a direct fund manager, and they were very favourable, 7 or 8 years ago, and they didn't perform very well over COVID. And then going out of COVID, they still continued not to perform. And that's, for me, was a red marker, because there was I'm managing lots of other funds, and I'm going, well, hang on a minute, this is not doing what it should be doing. They're telling me, they tell you what they want you to know. They're telling me it's doing X and Y, and I'm saying, no, hang on, because I've got a different perspective. I've got the wider knowledge where we're independent, we're not tied to one person. And that's why we said, no, I'm not happy with that. We need to make the change. Yeah.
And I think, going back to your question, you've got that wider perspective versus I'm just looking at my little portfolio going, oh, it's going up, it's going down, whatever. And you can say, hang on a minute, that's not good enough. And that's really useful because, I've got financial acumen, but I'm not all over everything. And, it might have been good enough, but you're like, no, that's not good enough. So that was really useful. And yeah, I was saying to you the other day, I enjoy our kind of periodic catch-ups because it's really useful. It's time that's focused on me in a way that I would never sit down and review things like to do with my long-term financials. So I love that, I guess, discipline or routine around that comes with working with accountability.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is just a natural next question to ask. Obviously, when you do it yourself, it doesn't cost you anything, and you're paying for that perspective. Has that been somebody that has done it themselves and can do it themselves? Is that something that you are happy to pay out for, or has it been a struggle for you at times?
For me, it pays for itself. It just pays for itself. So, like, I know that the returns that you're going to help me get are going to outweigh the costs. So for me, it's not a cost. It's part of the investment.
Got
and
it.
So would I want to be managing it on my own? No. And there was a reason why, I contacted you in the first place. And I've never regretted that, even with some of the ups and downs when you're like, oh, this could be better. And it's like, yeah, but I had faith that we were going to get it to a better place. And we have. And then that's why I've added in the additional pension.
And that was an interesting point, what happened with your old Mastercard pension. We was having an annual review. I didn't look after that pension, but I told you that we had some paperwork. For some reason we've been given paperwork around that pension, and I said, they've made a complete change to your investment strategy with that pension, and you wasn't aware of it. And they do that with old employer schemes. They change them all the time, and they had devalued or de-risked your portfolio in a completely different way, which I wouldn't do. And you were quite surprised by that.
Yeah, so that was really good. The fact that we had our meeting, and we've talked about that pension over the last couple of years, and up until then it hadn't made sense to kind of bring it in, and then it was just like, and then you did the review and you're like, yeah, I think it's time. So yeah, I completely trust your view on that.
Thank you. And I think that's the benefit of working with somebody who's bespoke advice and impartial advice. It's not about some financial advisors. There's some great advisors out there. I am not the only one. I have other advisors in my team as well. But we're impartial, and it's not about just getting you into our funds under our management on one platform or a particular way of investing, because it's about giving that all-round advice and making sure that, and under the FCA, which is the Financial Conduct Authority, we shouldn't just be moving pensions just for the sake of moving pensions. So I had a question, and then I've gone off on my little rant tangent, and I'm now thinking, what was the question? When it comes to financial advisors, what would you say to somebody that thinks they don't need a financial advisor, or they can't pay for a financial advisor, or is maybe, thinking of looking for a financial advisor? What tips would you give them?
So the most important thing for me is the relationship. So this is a relationship, and when I went into it, when I contacted you and we first had a chat, I saw this as a long-term relationship. We're not married to each other.
No, you can divorce me anytime.
but I do see it as a long-term relationship, and it is, I think having trust in somebody is important. I do a lot of networking. I meet lots of financial advisors. I actually feel relieved that I've got one, and that I don't need to, and that's a great excuse, I'm good, thanks, I've got one. But I'm, there's only one person that I know in the whole of all the people that I know that are financial advisors that I think, I could go with them. Yeah. And that person I've not seen for a long time now anyway.
It's okay, I'm all right.
But I think that trust is really important. And as I said, I look forward to our catch-ups, because for me that's a time when I'm taking time out of my busy life, work, everything, to spend time on me and future Melanie, and that's really, really important. Could I do this on my own? I wouldn't want to, really. So, and I'm not saying that I put all the responsibility on you and I blame you if it goes wrong. That's not that at all. But I think it's really nice. Like, my future is really important, and making sure that I have somebody that knows what they're talking about and knows what they're doing is really important. And it does take some burden off me. It lightens the load. It's not something that I need to worry about because I've not spent enough time or not done the right thing. Okay, we can course correct as we go along, but it's not something I have to do alone.
Great. And is there any sort of tips, being you're astute in your own finances in your own right, is there any general tips that you would give to families, male or female? Obviously we focus on working with women, but is there any particular tips that you would give from your experience of just in life in general, whether it's employed or self-employed?
Part of the challenge with women, and there's lots of statistics on this, and I don't have that, is the fact that because women are the ones that take time out for having kids, rearing kids, caring responsibilities, whatever, there's less opportunities for us to earn money, and so there's less opportunities for us to put money aside. To the extent that you can, any savings, whether it's short-term savings or longer-term savings like your pension, these are so important. There's a real disparity, and it's so important that women do have money and they feel that they do have choices. And I know that a lot of people stay in relationships or stay in jobs or whatever where they're not happy, and this is a travesty. So to the extent that you can put some money aside, and I know there's always demands of money and demands of time, but demands of money in the short term, to the extent that you can put some aside, that's really important.
And I love that. Thank you for that. So is there any sort of parting suggestions that you would leave for those that are trying to get out of the rat race, and if they're in their job right now feeling they want to start 2026 with much more energy going into what they're going to do next? Is there any sort of parting tips you'd give them?
Well, I always think that the Motivational Maps is a great place to start with that. I offer a free career discussion to anybody that gets in touch. This is a great place to start, just talking to somebody about it. So you don't have to talk to me. You could talk to a colleague, a friend, a family member, somebody that gets it, somebody that's willing to listen and not judge. The challenge is if we speak to people that are too close to us, they can't help it, but they have their own interests at heart as well, even if they want the best for you. And so they're not impartial. So speaking to somebody impartial can be really useful. Just talking through your options. Everybody has options. We just don't always see them. And if you can speak to somebody that has got an outside view, and it can be useful helping to come up with some of those options.
Amazing. Great advice. Very simple, but do you know what? It's always the simple stuff that works. Sometimes it's not something massively elaborate, and going back to basics and really figuring out, well, do you need to actually just take some time out? Do you need to reduce your hours? Do you need to think about maybe retraining, but do that whilst you're working? So, what do you want to retrain in? What courses do you want to do? Or is it that you actually need to enhance your role and your skill set, because then that would enhance your job and you could do a better job and your boss would be happier? Yeah. There's so much to think about, and that perspective that you were talking about, where I'm investing clients' money and I understand a bigger spectrum of the overall, like how 85 over 100 clients, how they're doing, how you compare to that, having that perspective. When you're speaking to somebody like yourself that's spoken to lots of other people, it gives you a different perspective. It means you ask different questions, which is impartial. So it's actually, we both do very different jobs, but in the skill set there's actually very, very similar. Well, I've loved our conversation today, Melanie. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing a little bit about your journey, your background, and thank you for being so open about your finances as well. That's always a very brave thing to do. But thank you for sharing your knowledge around career change and how people can make that difference and make that transition themselves.
My pleasure.
Thanks for coming. Well, that's over and out for today's show. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us today at Accelerating Your Wealth with your host, myself, Rebecca Robertson. I hope you enjoyed the show. Do subscribe and let us know in the comments any of your thoughts.